So this is a great program, and I'm glad we could be a part
Actually,
of it.
no, it happened to me in LA once. I came to give a talk to some hedge fund people, and I come to this Hollywood, I don't know, some big auditorium, and the woman greets me and takes me to the green room, and she says, "You can go and dress up here." And I said, "I'm dressed." And then the guy who introduced me, like a thousand people in the audience, and he says, 3 years ago, we had Jerry Seinfeld here. And last year, we had James Taylor. And the year before that, we had some other. He said, sadly, he says, the new rules of financial regulation are such that we can no longer invite entertaining people. So we have this Duke professor. Yeah. Anyway, I have good memories from LA.
Yeah, so do I. So good morning, LA. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to start today with 3 questions. Okay, raise your hand if, roughly speaking, within 10, 20 cents, you know the price per gallon to drive your car, to fill up your car in gas. Gasoline, sorry, that was poor. It's morning, forgive my wording. Okay, keep your hand up, and keep your hand up if you know, roughly speaking, within 10, 20 cents, the price per gallon of energy to heat your home. All right, nobody. Okay. Raise your hand if you use credit cards. I assume pretty much everyone. Keep your hand up if at the end of the month you know exactly what your bill will be. Okay. No. Okay, raise your hand if at some point this week you promised yourself you were going to get some exercise. Right, good. Keep your hand up if raising your hand is all the exercise you've gotten this week. So we'd like to start with those questions because right off the bat it shows you the challenges of thinking about money in different contexts and thinking about human behavior. Right? The first question is essentially, what's the price of energy? One time it's in your car, one time in your house, but for some reason we know one and not the other. Second question is sort of about what credit cards do and how the separation between time and purchasing can affect what we know and what we think about, right? You spend, but you don't know how much you spend at the end. And the third, of course, is really about self-control. How even when we make promises to ourselves, we break those promises. How it's hard to think about the future. And that is really one of the main things that affects how we think about money. And we all think about money in, depending on how much coffee you've had, silly, stupid, irrational ways. I think irrational is a nice safe word. And we think about money all the time, but we don't think about how we think about it. Right? Like, we're all obsessed with money. Right? Nobody watches Lifestyles of the Poor and Decrepit. Right? They watch Rich and Famous. They want to think about getting money, having money, spending money, sometimes saving money. But we don't always think about it in a good way, in a healthy way. And that's sort of what we want to do with the book, is show people how we're thinking about it so that we can recognize what we're doing and then create systems to take advantage of our own flaws instead of being taken advantage of. And it's important because even for those of us, no matter how rich we are, how smart we are, where we are on that spectrum, we all have trouble thinking about money. And I use myself as an example. Before making it big, before making it here, I went to Princeton, right? And then I went to law school in Burning Man 2 or 4 times. But I went to Princeton, and the economics professors there were like Ben Bernanke and Alan Blinder and some other white guy. And like, I studied from the best. Like, I got A's in economics. I got a degree in economics. I understood economics. But that didn't mean I could do the right thing with money for myself. Because there's like perfect economic human who has perfect information and supply and demand and all that. And then there's real humans. Right? And when real humans come in the picture, our psychology gets involved, our emotions get involved, and we start making the mistakes that we talk about in the book. And one of the main reasons why we do that is like, we don't know how to think about money. In many ways, we don't even know what money is. Right? And so Dan, tell us.
What is money?
What is money?
Okay. So what is money? So first of all, we need to recognize that money is an amazing invention. Right? Just imagine how the world would look like without money. And the amazing thing about money is it's a social convention where we agree that we can buy almost everything with money and almost everything maps to money. Right? So rather than trading off chicken for broccoli, we trade chicken for money and broccoli for money and so on. And what it means is money is the common good. Right? It's a good that you can substitute for everything. Now, that's the wonderful thing about money. It allows us to save. It allows us to specialize. Right? It creates tremendous efficiencies. At the same time, this very feature of money that it can translate to everything makes it really hard to think about. Imagine I gave you now $4. How happy would you be? What exactly would you be thinking? What you should be thinking is, what's the best thing I can get with $4? And gee, I'm so happy I got that. But you don't. You just say it's $4. In fact, if I gave you a cappuccino, you would probably be happier than if I gave you $4 if you like cappuccino, even though you could buy a cappuccino for a little bit less than $4, and with $4 you could do all kinds of other things. So money is wonderful. It's about opportunity cost, but opportunity cost it's really hard to think about. And not only is it hard to think about, technology is making it more difficult. By the way, thinking about opportunity cost means that every time you go to buy a cup of coffee, you should be thinking, is this the best possible way to spend $3.50? What are all the other possible ways to use this money now and in the future? Right? In 30 years, it could be $7. You know what? Maybe you could do something better then. Really hard to think about it. And how does technology make it worse? Imagine that we lived in a cash economy. Every day I came to you and I gave you $100. And I said, that's your whole spending for the day. You would very quickly understand the opportunity cost. You would understand that if you take an Uber, you don't have money for dinner. If you pay for a big lunch, you don't have money for medications, whatever it is, right? What would happen if I gave you $700 on Monday? On Monday, you would say, there's no opportunity cost. I have so much money. By Thursday, you would realize you're behind and it will be too late. What would happen if I gave you the money every month on the first of the month for the whole month and charge you taxes the following April and gave you a credit card and student loans and mortgage payment and car payment? Now, we really obfuscate the relationship between what we do and the consequences. Imagine you see a purse. It's your purse? No, I'm joking. You see a purse, and it's $1,000. I don't know if it's expensive. Anyway, it's $1,000 for a purse. Okay. If you go ahead and buy this purse for $1,000, what exactly would give? Where is it coming from? Right? If I gave you money for the day, you would understand where it's coming from. If I gave you for a week, you would understand. But with this duration and all of these financial technologies, it's very hard to think about. We went to a Toyota dealership a few years ago, and we talked to people who were about to buy a new car. These people who were about to buy a new car, they already knew what their monthly payment was going to be. And we said, if you're going to go ahead and buy this new car, what would you not be able to do? What would you give up? And do you think people had an answer? No, because they never thought about it. They knew what was the monthly payment, but they didn't think, where is it coming from? So then we pushed. We said, look, something has to give. Something. What would give? The most common answer we got was, if I buy a Toyota, I can't buy a Honda, which is true, but not the relevant answer, right? The relevant answer we wanted, was some intertemporal substitution across time and across product categories. If I buy this car, there are 12 weeks of vacation over the next 4 years, and 13 less books and 70 less lattes, whatever it is, in substitution across time and across product category. So the thing about money is that it's a wonderful thing, but at the same time, the very nature of it makes it so that it's very hard for us to think about it the right way. And what do we do when we can't think about something the right way? We think about it the wrong way. And we have lots of wrong ways to think about money. Relativity is one of them. There are value cues. There's pain of paying. There's all kinds of elements that get us to think about money the wrong way. And the thing about it is that it's not just that we think about it the wrong way. There are forces out there that try to take advantage of the way that we misthink about money. So we need to think about it just in general, but also because we need to protect ourselves.
Right. So interesting, you talk about the forces that try to take advantage of us, and you mentioned technology and opportunity costs, and essentially the real challenge with so much financial technology is they make it even harder for us to think about opportunity costs. Even if we wanted to, they make it so we never have that moment of, okay, I'm about to spend. They make it so we're not even aware of the spending. And the way they do that is they reduce something called the pain of paying. Paying actually stimulates the same area of the brain as pain. Right? When you see that $20 bill leave your hand, it's the same region, which makes sense. Some of you were laughing because you felt that pain. But when we don't feel that pain, we're less likely to realize we're even paying and to consider opportunity costs. And now normally, pain is a good thing, right? It tells us that something needs attention, right? You break a leg and that pain tells you to go get medical help. You put your hand on a stove and the pain of the burn tells you to move your hand away, right? In 7th grade, you call up Megan Flaherty and say, hey, it's Jeff, you want to go out? And she says, Jeff who? You end up leaving the law to be a comedian. But that's only if we let that pain in. Right? Only if we allow ourselves to feel it, then do we learn the lesson from it. And so often in paying, in financial matters, we're not letting that pain in. And we do that in other areas. Like Jerry Seinfeld has a great routine where he talks about helmets. Like he says, people were doing all these activities that were bashing in their heads, and instead of stopping the head bashing activities, we just put a little piece of plastic. Right? That's sort of what we do. Instead of stopping the paying activities that cause us pain, we use a little piece of plastic, a credit card, so we don't feel it. And one of the genius things of credit cards, among other things, is that they change the time, they increase the time between consumption and payment. And the time between consumption and payment is one of the two main things that makes up the reasons why we have the pain of paying. The other is the attention you pay. But just to start with the time, so you sort of see how that works, let's say you go on a vacation. And this has happened on my honeymoon. We went and we prepaid for the honeymoon. Right? We paid in advance, all inclusive, paid too much, right? More than we probably could have, but we got there and we enjoyed the experience incredibly. We never thought about money, right? We just went and did our thing. We got a drink from the bar, took it to the beach, got a drink from the person coming by the beach, then we swam and got another drink, then we found more alcohol, and we had a great time. Now imagine if we had instead taken the bill and had the bill come after the experience. Right? There's still some time between consumption, but then we would have thought, oh, was that bottle of wine really worth 50 bucks that we left there? And maybe while we were consuming it, we would have been a little more, oh, should we spend this money on it? Right? So our pain would be lessened. And with the most painful time, the most painful way to spend money is to pay at the same moment that you consume. Right? Because then you're really making that decision. You're feeling that pain. You're paying attention and deciding if it's worth it. But that's also the least pleasant. Right?
When I teach my class on the psychology of money, I sometimes bring pizza, and I charge the students 25 cents per bite. Right? So Jeff said, you can pay in advance, no pain of paying. You can pay at the end, there's some pain of paying. What happens when you pay on the spot? What do you think happens when I give the students pizza and I charge them 25 cents per bite? Huge bites. Huge bites. And you would think that they would take a huge bite and they would learn that this is unpleasant, but they don't. Like they sit there with the pizza and they say, I can push a little bit more in and make it more efficient, right? And it is more efficient. Like they get, a whole pizza for 75 cents. It's like an amazing deal. But they suffer. They suffer from the whole process. So the pain of paying is about timing and saliency. Right? And we can think about as society, what kind of things do we want to dial up the pain of paying, making it higher and therefore decrease consumption? And what kind of things do we want to dial down the pain of paying and therefore get people to spend more? So when Jeff goes on vacation, you don't want to go to a wonderful place, spend thousands of dollars, sit there looking at the sunset and say, I really want a mojito, but it's $20 and I feel terrible about it. It might, give you a final good touch for the vacation. You might not want to think about money. But there are many things we want people to think more about money. One example is energy, right? So think about energy at home. Most of you said you don't know how much it is, right? Why? Because we have an energy meter that is outside of the house, and they charge us directly from our checking account a month later. There's one study that shows that when people move from writing a check to their energy company to automatic deduction, energy consumption increases by 4%, which is quite a lot, and for a small activity. But when you write a check, you think about it. Not for a long time, but you think about it. And maybe as you think about it, you tell your family members to be a bit more careful. Maybe you go and you change the thermostat. You do a few things. Now, how could we dial that even up? Imagine that we wanted to get the pain of paying to be even higher. What would you do? Cash, great. What else?
Is it charge every time you turn the
Charge every time. Yeah, so imagine that we moved the meter from outside to the kitchen. And you had to feed it with cash, right? So this was your energy for the day. It had dollars, and you could see it going down. And every time you would turn on an appliance, you will see it going down faster. What would happen? How comfortable would you be in the winter and in the summer? Not as comfortable, right? Jimmy Carter many years ago asked Americans to wear a sweater. It seems like Americans can't do it. But I think if we had the right meter, all of a sudden we would find the power inside to wear a sweater. There's another example for this. Do you remember the law of charging people 10 cents per paper bag? When they announced that law, I happened to be in Palo Alto. So I went to Whole Foods to sit and watch people. Now, this is probably the most expensive supermarket in the world, right? Whole Foods in Palo Alto. You can't buy a yogurt for less than the minimum wage in the US. people buy a little bit of kale and something, and it's $200. Whole Foods could have easily increased the price by 50 cents. Nobody would have noticed. If it went from 198 to 198.5, nobody would know anything. But that's not what they did. They said, here is your bill. Would you like a bag for 10 cents? It separated that purchase, right? And all of a sudden, people said, 10 cents for a bag? This is terrible. Give me this. I'll pay $5 for this canvas bag as an investment. I don't want to pay the 10 cents every time. Now, it's a tiny amount, but it's painful. There's something about the morality of that seems offensive. So imagine that we're designing something like sugar tax. Let's say one day we would get to it. If we did, and we just bundled the tax into the product, people would not notice. If something moved from costing $1.07 to $1.12, we probably wouldn't notice that much. But if we separated that amount, put it as a separate amount, and got people to feel the pain of paying, now there would be a difference. So the pain of paying is really an amazing thing, right? But the thing is, where are we going with society with the pain of paying? So we said we had cash, debit cards, credit cards, but now we have Android Pay, Apple Pay, Amazon Go, right? Amazon has this store that you can just walk inside, you put things in your cart, you disappear, and they take the money when you pass away from your inheritance. At some later, you don't see the money. You don't see the money. As we move with these technologies that don't show us the money, we don't think about what we're spending, and therefore we spend much, much more. So that's one example that we should think about. Right. What's another one?
Well, we'll get to another one, but okay. One thing I want to point out on this is why I love the pain of paying, and we often start with this, is because it shows that these things, these value cues that we fall for, can be used either way. We're not saying increase the pain. We're not saying go on that honeymoon and pay all the time, or when you get coffee every day, stress about it. It's just be aware of it. Right? Like the example that I like is, for those of you with investment accounts, right, 401k, you have a management fee that you probably thought about.
All investment accounts, not just 401k.
Okay.
All of them.
Well, I give money to this guy that lives down the street from me.
I see.
So you have a management fee that you probably think about once, right, when you first open that account. But imagine you have $1 million portfolio, right, and you have a 1% management fee. You never see that 1%. You see how much you grow, which can be very good in times like now. But imagine instead of that, at the end of each year, you had to write your broker a check for $10,000. You'd feel that pain of paying, and you might reassess, is he or she doing a good job? Right? So it shows that the pain of paying can be useful, and it can also be good to avoid it. And a lot of times, what that pain of pain might say when you're thinking about that broker fee is it worth it? Is it fair that he's getting that much money? Like, is he putting forth the effort? And fairness and effort is another of the value cues, another of the substitutes that we use to judge what something should be worth when we can't assess the opportunity cost. There's a story or a legend, I guess it is, that Pablo Picasso was sitting in the park, and a woman came up to him and said, "You're Pablo Picasso." He said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Would you draw my portrait?" And he said, "Okay." And he looked at the woman for a minute. Then he took his brush and he, in one motion, created this incredible capturing of her essence and gave it to her. She said, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is who I am. I can't believe you did this. This is incredible. How much do I owe you?" He said, $5,000. What? That's not fair. That took you no effort. It took you like a minute. I said, "No. It took me a lifetime and a minute. But she only saw that minute of effort. And with something like art, how can you judge it? It's hard for her to calculate opportunity costs, so she fell for that shortcut of effort, what it was worth. Similarly, less like beautifully, you might have a locksmith that will open your door, but will take, like an hour fumbling around, has to go back to his car to get different equipment. You'll pay that locksmith more than someone who walks up and goes chick, 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 and lets you in a minute. Right? Because you see that effort. Right? Then there's a study about data recovery. If you get your data wiped on your computer, you're going to pay someone more if they take a few days to do it than if they fix it right away. So you end up paying hourly, when the question really should be, what is that data recovery worth to you? Not what is someone doing? Or what is it worth to me to get in my home that I'm locked out of? Or what is the value of me having a Picasso painting of myself? But we can't figure that out sometimes, so we fall back on these cues, in this case, fairness, which is not always a wise decision. It gets us away from really valuing things correctly.
It also means, if you think about the locksmith and the data recovery, that we pay more to incompetent people, right? If
lawyers charge by the hour, by the way, so
yeah.
Put it together.
When think about this by the hour charging, for example, why? Right? Why is charging by the hour reasonable? If somebody has really good advice, why do we not pay them if they come up with it with 5 minutes, like the Picasso example? Now think about the following. What kind of industries are really good at showing us effort? What kind of industries show us really all the effort that went into what they give us? Buildings?
Building.
Maybe construction. I think one of the good ones is restaurants, particularly open kitchens. Right? You go to a place with an open kitchen, you can't believe how many people are there, and the locomotion, and the fire, and lots of things are happening. And on top of that, they do a deliberate effort to write on the menu something that describes all the work, right? Why would you care how many hours a piece of fish was marinated in? Oh my goodness, like 17 hours, this fish. And not only that, it came all the way from Maine. That's really an amazing thing. And the spices came from here. And they give you this description that says, this is an unbelievable amount of effort. I look at this and I realize that, just this tomato was handpicked by this farmer. And anyway, you get the whole description. Another industry that is really good in showing effort are consultants. Anybody here a consultant? Okay,
be proud.
Be
right?
proud.
You didn't read the book before.
So if you hire McKinsey to do anything, anybody here works for McKinsey? No. Okay, if you hire McKinsey to do anything, what do you get? You get 1 page of a piece of advice that you wanted to. Usually it's fire 20% of the people, but you get 1 piece of advice, but before that you get a 500-page PowerPoint presentation. Now, the reality is you just want a piece of advice. How would you feel if somebody came and said, here's my piece of advice? Versus saying, here's 500-page PowerPoint presentation, and now you feel that's amazing. So some industries are really good at showing effort. Some industries are really terrible. What's the one industry that is the worst in showing effort? Almost everything online. Anybody here in the kind of the online world?
You guys heard of the internet?
Think about things online. How much do we see the effort? Not so much. We have these amazing services, right? Unbelievable stuff happening that is kind of like magic, but we don't know it, and because they don't tell us, we don't appreciate this. So there's one exception, and this exception is a website called Kayak. How many people have been to Kayak? Yeah. So what's so nice about Kayak is that they tell you what they're doing for you. So imagine the following experiment. Condition 1, you search for a flight, you press enter, boom, you get the results. You're happy. Condition 2, you type the search, you press enter, you wait 10 seconds. But those 10 seconds, you see the black screen and the wheel of death. 10 seconds. At the end of these 10 seconds, people are unbelievably frustrated. They can't believe waiting 10, how can you possibly wait 10 seconds? Condition number 3, you type, you press enter, you wait 10 seconds, but those 10 seconds are filled with searching United, with searching American, we're reorganizing the results by timing and preferences and so on. At the end of that, people are happier than if they did not wait at all. Now, it's not as if you ask people, would you rather wait or not? They say, oh, I much rather would wait. But if you take time and you fill it with information about what we're doing for people, now they have a very different sense of the magic that happened to them. Right? Otherwise, we just take things for granted. But we can take time and put things in that would get people to appreciate us to a higher degree.
I often wonder, it's something like that, like Google, right? You Google search, you put in your name, not that I do that every day, and you hit search, and like in an instant, we returned 400,000 results, and they list it. Now, what if Google were a charge service, right? You had to pay for it. Imagine like those 400,000 results might take a little longer to show. They might show you all the effort that went into it. And it's fascinating how online people have learned to manipulate, for lack of a better word, whether or not we see that effort. Like a dating site that shows you all of your matches, or one that shows you all of your matches and all the people that you were not a match for. Right? What is more valuable to you? Right? You'll think the one that they did all the effort when really you just care about, you know, which people you can manipulate. Right?
Yeah. This is also a good place to give you some personal advice. So if you take couples and you put both people in the couple in a separate room and you say, from the 100% work in the relationship, what % do you do? What do you think happens when you add the two numbers together? It's always more than 100%. And the reason is that we are always in the kaya condition for our own work. Right? So what happens is, no matter what you do in the relationship, you see the little details. You say to yourself, I take out the trash. That's a 16-step process. It requires skill, finesse, expertise. You know, it's a delicate aspect of life. My wife, she pays the bills. That's like one thing, right? So what happens is, whatever we do, we see all the details. Our significant other, we don't. So the piece of advice here is to be more kayak-like. When you come home, say, we're searching United, give a little bit description on all the things you've done today. I'm not recommending to do it every day, but from time to time, it's a good thing to do.
Right. So you want to talk about free a little bit?
Sure. Actually, why don't we talk about architecture?
Yeah.
When in architecture...
That's a good question. So how do you, this is a beautiful building, but architecture, how do you judge what architecture is worth? Right? What do you do? You look at maybe other buildings and what they've been worth? You know, I mean, it's almost like real estate.
I mean, how many people here bought a house at some point? Okay, so you evaluated houses. You made a big decision at some point. How did you go about this?
Location.
Location, sure. How close to schools? Did the listing price affect you? Probably. There was a study in Tucson many years ago. So A was Tucson, B was many years ago. So when I give you the figures, try not to cry. But they brought brokers, professionals, their job is to assess the value of a home, into a home they'd set up. They gave them the MLS listing, they gave them the work on the house, the neighborhood, the schools, all the relevant information. And they also gave them a listing price. And they said, what is this home worth? Now, the brokers that saw a listing price of $120,000, they had one price. The brokers that saw a listing price of $150,000, they had a higher price. The brokers that saw $200,000 had a higher valuation of what it should be. Now, the question is, what is the value of this home? Not what does the listing price suggest. The listing price shouldn't matter at all. They should just decide what that home is worth. But they didn't. They were affected by the listing price. And just to not give a totally bad reputation to real estate brokers, they also did the test with lay people, and the effect was much higher for them. They were more drawn by that listing price. And it makes me wonder, like, what goes into that? Why does listing price have so much impact, especially in something like homes or architecture, that it's just hard to evaluate?
Yeah. And it's because things are hard to evaluate. We said we can't do things the right way, we do it the wrong way. And we basically use irrelevant input as part of our decision. And part of that is relative valuations. Relative to what? Relative to whatever we have. There's actually a study in a very different domain. You give people a bowl of soup, and you say, eat the soup, and people eat the soup. And when they finish the soup, do you say, do you want more soup? They say no. You give another group of people the same bowl of soup with the same amount of soup, and they start eating the soup. Now, these people don't know there's a hose at the bottom of the soup bowl connected to a big vat of soup. And as people eat the soup, you push a little bit more soup in. These people end up eating 72% more soup because it goes down but slower than it should. And then you have to stop them after 72% more soup than the first group. And you say, do you want more soup? And they say, of course, I'm not finished yet. We compare food in that case to the bowl. The bowl is irrelevant to how much you've eaten, but it's hard for us to evaluate how much we eat. So we compare it to all kinds of cues, all kinds of irrelevant cues. Now let's think about something like pricing. The iPhone X just came out. Anybody here already ordered it or got it?
These people are here at 8 o'clock. They don't have jobs.
They don't. So about 10 years ago, the first iPhone, about 10 years ago, right? The first iPhone
like
came out. And if you remember, it came out at $600. And then quickly later, they said, sorry, it's only $400. Right? Now, think about two worlds. World number one, Apple introduces the iPhone at $600, and then they say, no, it's only $400. World two, they introduce it at $400 to start with. In which world do you think the iPhone at $400 is a better deal? Now, here's the thing that is so difficult. You get this new little gadget, and it can do two things that you couldn't do before. You could do this and this. That's about it. And now you have to figure out how much is this worth. Is this $50 and this is $70? Is it the other way around? Like, how much is this experience worth in terms of money? How would you even start to compare it? Is it $10? Is it $100? $3? What is it worth, right? You can see how difficult it is. And we have no comparison. Like if you have soup, at least you compare it to the soup bowl. What do you compare an iPhone to? But if it used to cost $600, now it's an unbelievable deal.
Right. You compare the 401 to the 601.
So my goodness, I can't believe it. So attractive. And then, of course, the rest of the prices are relative to that. Relativity also gets us into trouble because relativity means that when we have big ticket items, we think about spending more in very different ways than we have small ticket items. So imagine, for example, that you're going to buy a cheap T-shirt. It's $15. And as you buy this cheap T-shirt, the salesperson tells you that you could buy the same exact T-shirt in their other store 3 blocks down for $5 instead of $15. So he said, it's the same store, it's just a sister store for us. Here it's $15, there they have the same exact shirt for $5. 3 blocks, beautiful weather outside. How many of you would walk 3 blocks to save $10 on a $15 shirt? Okay. Case number 2, you're buying an Armani suit. It's $1,015. The salesperson says, just so you know, there's another store, it's a sister store for us. They have the same suit on sale. Instead of $1,015, it's $1,005. 3 blocks down. How many of you would walk 3 blocks to save $10 on a $1,015 suit? 1. And also, you don't look very confident. But
he's sitting next to a $1,000 bag,
yeah.
so he's very confused. Relatively speaking, the suit is fine.
So think about it. Why is that the case? And even if you say you'll walk, the feeling is very different. In the first case, you say, it's a third. How can I not walk when it's a third? In the second case, you say, it's insignificant. It's only $10, right? This is because we think about things in relative ways. So if we buy a house, really easy to spend more money. How many of you have ever renovated a house, an apartment? Okay. Here is what happens when people renovate. You renovate a house.
Spending, let's say 60 grand, right?
Let's say 60 grand.
Small renovation.
Your contractor comes to you and he says, for only, the important only is important, for only $3,000 more, you could get something Italian, and the something changes. Tile, faucets, whatever it is, and you think to yourself for 45 seconds, and you say, that's a great deal. Let's go for it. Then you go to the supermarket, and you stand by the tomatoes. And there are the tomatoes that cost 99 cents per pound and 102. And you say, which tomatoes should I get? The cheap one. And your whole life making decisions about tomatoes will not mount up to $3,000. But $3,000 is part of a huge package. So you make the decision very quickly. Tomatoes are a separate decision. So you spend much more time on this. So this is how relativity works.
Yeah, relativity is another way that if we don't think about money, we won't make the right choice. We'll sort of fall into these traps and spend the $3,000 easily. And ultimately, what I think we want to accomplish with the book is getting you to think about money. Not all the time, but now and then to stop and think and find a system that works for you. We're not going to change human nature, right? You're not going to be people that don't use relativity, but just recognize that and use it in the right moments. And the human nature is cross-cultural. Right? It's not, oh, Americans spend this way and the Japanese do this. The human nature part is universal. And Dan did a study in Kenya that I think really demonstrates that really well.
Yeah. So very quickly, here is the basic study. This was a study on very poor people, people who live on about $10 a week in a slum called Kibera in Kenya. And we were trying to get them to save a little bit of money for a rainy day. And here is what happens if you're very poor. And let's say you live hand to mouth, right? You have no excess income, and one day you get sick. Now you have to borrow. If you're in Kibera, you might be borrowing at 10% a week. And let's say 2 weeks later you're healthy, you're 2 weeks behind plus interest rate. Very hard to get out of it. And this happens to the poor the world over. In the US, for example, the poor have about 2.5 times a year negative income shocks that they can't pay and they have to borrow. So we wanted people to have a little bit of money for a rainy day. So we said, let's create a system where it's easy to put money in and hard to get it out. So we created a system with M-Pesa, the online payment company, where people could text money in, but to get it out, they had to go to the bank physically and get the money. So it could take them 5 hours to take a bus, go to the city, and so on. So we created a system. And then we tried all kinds of things. Some people got a text message. Some people got a text message as if it came from their kids. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. This is little Joseph. Try and save 100 shillings, about $1 for our family. Some people got a financial match, 10%, 20%. And some people got a coin about this size that had 24 numbers etched on it. And we said, put it somewhere in your hut, and every week take a knife and scratch the number for that week. Week 1, 2, 3, scratch it this way if you didn't save, and this way if you saved. What happened? What happened was that all of those methods increased saving. Kids were effective, reminders were effective, but by far, the biggest success was the coin. The coin created more saving than 20% match. Now, what is it about the coin? Why is having a coin in the house as a physical token so effective? So I started thinking about this coin when I was in Soweto. Soweto is a slum in South Africa. And I walk around and I see a father buying funeral insurance for a week. In South Africa, funerals are very, very expensive. It's their big celebration in life, like weddings in the US. And this father bought funeral insurance for a week, which means it would only cover him if he dies in the next 7 days. Right? These are very poor people. They buy a small amount of soap and small amount of insurance. And what he does is he takes the certificate, his funeral certificate, and in a very ceremonious way gives it to his son. And as he was doing it, I was thinking, you know, what is this father doing? And think about a breadwinner, a bread earner, that on one particular night buys insurance or puts money in savings. What does the family sees on that day? They see less. If you're very poor and you live day to day, they'll see less tonight. If you're not so poor, they'll see less this week or this month. But in any case, no matter what level of wealth, you know, with some limitations you are, if you're a breadwinner and you bring money to the family and you get positive feedback from spending, not from saving. And the coin was the idea to show the family that it's not less, it's just different. It's true there's less food on the table, or water or kerosene, whatever it is. but there is another activity that we don't see. And more generally, you can think about society and money. So 1,000 years ago, we basically saved in goats or livestock, right? And when we saved in livestock, and every time you had more property, you would have more livestock, we could compete on who has more livestock. You could come home and you could see how much livestock your neighbor has, and you could see how much, and we could try and save more. Then we invented money, then we invented digital money, and we took this incredibly important activity of saving and insurance and made it invisible. So what do you know about your neighbors? How much are your neighbors saving? You have no idea. What you do know is how much they spend. Right? So we took this activity of spending, made it incredibly visible. We took the activity of saving, made it incredibly non-visible. And of course, we're changing the balance of what we care about. So now, one of the questions about designing money. As long as we had physical money, paper bills, we were kind of limited. Now we have digital money. It's really interesting. We can go into the direction of no pain of paying. That's one approach. But the second one is to say, let's rethink money. If we wanted to redesign it, right, how would we do it? How would we do it so that people don't not think about saving? I'll give you one example. There's a study that showed that if you go and you open college savings accounts to kids on the day that they are born, you take a group of kids, randomly assign them into two groups, you randomly open college savings accounts to half of them and put $500 there, you don't do it for the other kids, and then you go and visit those kids 4 years later. The kids with college savings accounts perform better.
Cognitive and social skills. Right?
Yeah. How can it be? Do the kids know they have college savings accounts? Of course not. The parents know. Once a month, the parents get a statement that says, this little kid has a college savings account. And they read to them a bit more. They buy them a few more books. It's not big steps, but it's lots of small steps over 4 years. Now, this is not making it publicly aware, but at least within the family, kind of like the coin, the family knows about this. Recently, we convinced the Israeli government to start a college savings accounts for every kid who was born since January 2017. And when we started this, the people from the Ministry of Finance said, let's just reduce the cost of college. Not the same thing, right? We wanted people to think from a very young age, the family to think about the kid, and then when the kid grows up a little, to think about themselves as having a college savings account. So the big thought, and we don't have a good solution for this, but the big thought is to say, how should we redesign money in our personal lives, first of all, and then as a society and startups and so on? If we understand that we have lots of flexibility in how we design it, how do we design it in a way that would get the better of us?
Right. And that's, really important. Obviously, we could have a whole other book or 10 about how we decide our social priorities, right? Our values are what do we think about insurance and savings, and then trying to get that implemented somehow. But there are tools to do that, and it starts with understanding how we as humans, individuals, think about money, and then making those systems for yourself, for your family, community, and so on. And that's the big thing, I think, the takeaway we want is that we want people to start thinking about what they do with money, to have these conversations on some level, whether it's just with your family, your spouse, your loved ones, or more broadly. Because there's a study, men are more willing to admit whether or not they use Viagra than how much they've saved for retirement. Right? What's a more personal and sensitive thing, right? Whether or not their savings works or if they use other aids. But we just don't talk about money. It's like this, it's forbidden. And hopefully that can be part of what we do, is we have the conversation more so that we talk about all these things, all these mistakes that we've made, and we learn. And really that is our hope, that we obsess so much about money, it takes up so much of our mental space, that we can give you some tools in order to ease that burden and in order to make better decisions in the future. And with that, I say thank you, and I open it up to questions.
Time for questions. Questions are $1.
Two for $2.
Just a reminder, questions around here start with a W or an H, sometimes a D. They are typically short. Only Jeff gets to ask follow-up questions, and we do not believe in two-part questions.
I'll try to keep it short. First of all, I enjoy greatly all the work that both of you have done. Obviously, this is in the service of better decision-making, and one part of the equation is greater awareness, and the other part has to be seemingly getting beneath the implicit biases, understanding the emotional connection, what percentage of each part of the equation would you say drives better behavioral change? The awareness, or getting beneath the surface and trying to get into really the psychological elements of things that have to be untangled?
Yeah. So one of the benefits of money is that we can create a system that would serve us, right? And the problem is that most systems out there are not in our benefit. Right? So just take Apple Pay as an example. So if you have an opportunity and you say, let me redesign the way I think about money. Let me do automatic deductions into savings. Let me take my discretionary spending, put it on a prepaid debit card, on a week-long budget starting on Monday. I mean, there's all kinds of things you could do. That would serve us the best, right? So once a year, you think to yourself, what kind of system do I want to create? What kind of things do I regret? And so on, and you create it. That's a much better approach than being aware. Because being aware is great, you can't be aware all the time. It's just exhausting. It's like counting calories. If you try to count calories for everything, most people just give up. It's just too much work. It's annoying, it's unpleasant, just sucks the joy out of life. So instead of doing everything, we do nothing. The same thing is true with money. If you went ahead and started thinking about every small purchase in terms of opportunity cost, and it would just drive you crazy. Right? So we need to find something in between. And a good method is to basically say, how do I create a system that helps me be better?
With rules.
With rules, yeah.
Right, like, again, we don't want you worrying every time you get coffee, but if like once a year you decide, okay, I'm only going to spend X on coffee for the year or the month, that's a rule. Right, sorry, over here.
I want to talk about the pain of paying, but a little bit in reverse. So I've been thinking about this. I'm on the board of my church, and nonprofits are all going to, like everyone, automatic payments now, which is great because you know then someone's committed, I'm going to pay this much for the rest of the year, every month this amount, and you can budget for that. But what I've been wondering is, are we missing out on people giving more? Because they're now emotionally detached. Oh, I've done my part, I'm done. My $50 or $100 a month, I'm good. But maybe at a time that I'm really moved, if I was writing the check every month, I might write a bigger check. And so I'm just wondering if you have thoughts or have you done any studies on how to manage that to make sure you maximize the opportunities while still capturing the way people want to pay.
Yeah. So in general, I would say if you get people to do automatic payment, go for it. Like, I can't think about a single example where this was a worse approach. No, on average, right? You might have a few people. There was one study on anchoring, like the same thing that Jeff mentioned about the housing, where people called for a pledge, and the people on the answer, you said, you wouldn't believe it. The person before you just gave $400. They said, how much do you want to give? And that anchor influenced people to give more. So I don't know if it's a church, you probably don't want to manipulate people into,
Depends on which church.
Yes. But anyway, so there are ways to get people to think more carefully on the one time that they are doing something. But then I can't think about a single case where getting people to think every time about a decision and they could have a choice not to do it, right? So it's not like the electricity bill when you can say, let me not pay this month. I can't think about that as a good strategy. Right. So stick with this.
A couple other things to add. I agree with Dan, of course, that keeping the auto pay is great, but it sounds like you're also wondering, can you make that emotional connection? And there are studies as far as like motivating people that if you give them social rewards, like saying everyone else is paying or people love doing this or thank you, that it does help in general. It may be for that initial, like how much do you want to pay per month? And also, this is for you, Dan, because you requested one of these. There was a gentleman I know, very, very wealthy, hedge fund guy, made a ton of money, and a charity, local charity in New York, asked him, you've never given to us, like, why not? And he said, well, my mom has just fallen, like, terribly ill. She has all these medical bills, like hospice care is just too much. And they said, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And my sister, she just lost her job, and her husband left. She's caring for, like, 3, little kids, and she doesn't know what to, I'm sorry. And my son, he just got kicked out of school. He has no idea what his financial future is going to be. He's on the verge of homelessness. And the charity said, oh, I'm sorry. And the man said, now let me ask you a question. Why should I give you money when I don't give them any money? There you go. Happy now? Yes. He asked me for a money joke. I was like, I don't do jokes. Which is why I ended up writing a book. Anyway, so next question.
In terms of influences, how significant a factor is generations? In other words, if you're the son of people who grew up in the Depression,
Sure.
you have a lifelong
Right.
effect.
Let me just repeat the question because for those in here. Question is essentially generational. Are there differences in generation if you grew up in the Depression or millennials who grew up after the Great Recession? How does that affect some of these factors? And I know what the answer is. But I'll let him give.
So in general, we tend to see large differences between generation X, Y, Z, whatever the letter is. But they're actually very small differences. Now, the real differences is not in personality, it's in life circumstances. So if we had a time machine, and we could take a generation Z person and move them 2 generations back or forward and so on, in 2 weeks they would be the same. It's not as if the wiring of teenagers today has changed so much. But what is the case is that the economic environment is very different. Imagine that you graduate, that you live in LA, and you graduate from university these days. What are your hopes of buying a house? The goal, it's not like running a marathon, right? That you say, okay, really tough, but maybe one day I could do it. It seems impossible. It seems impossible. And then, so we've taken, if housing prices, imagine housing prices dropped to what they were 30 years ago. Just that one thing. Do you think that kids today would not try to buy a house and say, let me live with 15 other people? And no, but the goal is just impossible to achieve, and we're not working on this. So on one hand, we have unachievable goals. I know there are a couple of people who look young here, I'm sorry.
You all look young. This is LA.
Yeah,
You look great. You look really great.
And then on top of that, what happens is we do have social media, and temptation is much higher, right? So we get exposed to all these wonderful things. Yesterday I was, somebody sent me, there's a hotel in Iceland that is just a bubble. So it's complete plastic thing that you could just see the night sky, and if you're lucky, the aurora. So all of a sudden, people just send you this stuff, right? You say to yourself, how can I possibly live without going to this little bubble and see the aurora? So temptation is increasing. The world is becoming more interesting. Travel is easier. So on one hand, so here's the thought experiment that we can't do. You take a couple of people, your generation, let's call you 50, and you replace them with people in their 20s, and you just shift them around. I don't think you would see a big difference. So I don't think it's personality. It's circumstances. Right. Now, the circumstances are very different and very important, and we should think about this. But it's not that somehow teenagers or young people these days are inherently different in terms of their brain processing.
Right. And those circumstances, essentially another way of saying systems, right? Circumstance has created a system where we're in a place where housing is not affordable, right? And temptation is there. Hopefully, instead, we can design the systems. Time for a couple more.
First of all, I love your talk. So my question...
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Yeah. No, they couldn't hear over there.
All right, so my question is, how do people's views of money change when it's backed by, like, gold, for instance? Or different commodities like goats? Like, how do their views, and if so, in what way?
Yeah, so you're saying that what happens when we moved from a gold-backed currency to a non-gold gold-backed currency?
Yeah.
So actually not that much, right? People think that a lot would change, but the amount of trust in money is really kind of incredible, right? If you think about if you think about money, it's kind of incredible that we are accepting this notion that this currency, that the government can print as much as they want all the time. What is the country that just announced a 50%, I saw in the paper this morning, 50% inflation just last month, somewhere in Africa. Anyway, but it's incredible how in most countries we have this incredible trust, and it hasn't changed much when we went from gold to non-gold. And I will say that, you know, there's this new technology now of blockchain, and we know, of course, Bitcoin. Anybody here bought some Bitcoin? Okay, just a few. So Bitcoin is one approach, and you can think about the technology. It's really interesting. But Ethereum is actually a much more interesting approach, because Ethereum is not just a currency. There's a programming language on top of that. And all of a sudden, there are things we could do. So there's a company I really like called Colu, C-O-L-U. And what they do is they try to create hyper-local currency. Let me take you a step back. So there's something called the tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons is the following thing. We each have a cow. We have a piece of grass. Our cows graze on that grass. The grass is depleted by the cows eating, grows up the same speed. Everybody's happy. One day, one person gets 2 cows. What happens? Now the grass is going down a little bit faster than it grows up. Eventually, there's not enough grass for any cows. Every day, there's just 1 millimeter less. Eventually, all the cows are malnourished. None of them is producing enough milk. Everybody's suffering. Now, to some degree, local economies are suffering the same thing. On any particular day, you're better off going to Costco or to Sam's Club or buying from Amazon instead of supporting your local economy. But eventually, we live in economic deserts where stores close down, and who wants to live in a neighborhood that has no economic activity? So it's betrayal of the public good, right? If you go out of the community and so on, what Colo is trying to do is to say, let's use blockchain-based technology to create a hyper-local currency. So now every neighborhood can create its own currency. And every neighborhood can incentivize people in the neighborhood to participate in that. Now, that for me is incredibly interesting. And not just interesting for spending money, it also means we can have new lending models. 2 examples. If my local restaurant or coffee shop or bookseller, whatever it is, need money, they need to borrow money. A bank can lend them at a very high interest rate. I actually want them to be around. I would be happy to lend them some money at a lower interest rate because they give me service. I'm happy to pre-buy the next 10 books or the 100 cups of coffee. There's tremendous economic activity that we make locally. A more extreme example, you remember in the 2007, 2008 housing crisis, some houses went under. Now, when houses went under, everybody in the neighborhood suffered, right? In fact, people in the neighborhood should have teamed up and gave money to the people who are about to lose their house, because everybody would have been better off. Our dependency on each other in the local economy is incredible, especially if you live in a place that has terrible traffic and you can't really escape. So it is incredible how dependent we are on the local economy, and I think money has the opportunity to basically increase that level of dependency if it's designed the right way. And I think that's what things like Ethereum are going to provide.
And this is LA. I would love someone to make a movie where like Amazon.com comes over the hills and like, I can't get out, there's too much traffic. Just me. All right, next question.
Final question for the morning.
Appreciate it so much, you guys being here. How could everyone here apply a simple item in their lives to be able to visually have that cue to save more?
So I'll answer this first. I met someone last night. We did a show, a talk, and a woman came up to me, and she had created a painting with several spirals. Like she'd drawn in just black and white outline spirals, and so there are probably like, I don't know, 120 of them. And she allowed herself to color in one of those every time she paid off a certain amount of her credit card bill. So like she paid off $1,000 and she got to color it in. And eventually she was creating this amazing, beautiful picture, and there was still like white space, and so it encouraged her to do it. And she found it very useful, and she has started to try to like have other people do that. And it sort of plays on that coin theory, right? She sees that thing, and doesn't say, pay your bill. It's a thing that she is inspired to do. So that's one very specific example.
And then if you live with somebody, then you want it to be a social mechanism. So it's not just something, I mean, it's good if you just know about this, but it helps if it's social coordination, especially if the other person is connected to you economically. We did a study where we compared how much people put in the 401k when they just put money in, or if the significant other has to sign the form as well, right? You go to a new job, they give you a form, you have 3 minutes to decide how much to put. What happens if you go and your significant other has to sign? All of a sudden, people save more. Why? Because if you take money away from your 401k, you bring less to the family, right? But if you decide together, all of a sudden you get credit for that money. It's a joint decision. People do it more. So something that is joint and salient is a good way to go.
Another one we talk about is having separate accounts. Essentially, most of us, our discretionary spending comes from our checking account. So don't put all your income into your checking account. Put some of it, whether it's an investment or otherwise, don't keep it in there, and you'll trick yourself into thinking you have less discretionary spending, and therefore you won't be, that $20 thing won't seem like 1%. It'll seem like 5%. Even that's the wrong way to think about money. You use your flaws to your advantage. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.